Morning, everyone.
Good morning,
Class.
sir.
Good morning,
Okay.
Doc.
Mm. Okay. So I am good, and I believe you are also doing well. Today, we continue with tutorials, and then we will look at week or unit 3 of our task. Unit 3 is on supplier selection and development. But before that, let us look at some excerpts from our last meeting. So basically, from last week, uh, yes, and maybe 2 weeks ago, we started with procurement rules, procurement methods, and I think we concluded everything on procurement methods last weekend. So I mentioned that procurement normally operates with established rules and guidelines. So once you see procurement, it goes with rules and guidelines. And the rules and guidelines may include some of the things we looked at last weekend. And some excepts are the following. So whether it is a public sector procurement or private sector, procurement entities are to prepare procurement plans for each fiscal year. So it is part of the rules that we plan our procurement. In other words, we need to be proactive with procurement decisions and activities, even though sometimes there will be some emergencies, like what happened last week in Accra. You saw massive, massive flood. You see, so this is an act of God. Nobody anticipated that we're going to experience this, even though from time to time we do experience that, but nobody anticipated that there was going to be a serious flood in Accra. So apart from things that are outside our control or beyond our control, we need to plan our procurement. It is one of the rules. Again, once you plan, entities are to aggregate requirements to achieve economies of scale where appropriate. So one of the reasons why we plan is for the entities to aggregate requirement so that we can purchase in bulk. The basis for bulk acquisition is to negotiate for lower prices. And in so doing, the entity is likely to achieve what we call economies of scale. Then again, there is also the need for all communications between procurement entities and tenderers to be in writing. And I think, mentioned this over and over again. Even though there is what we call oral communication, but entities are expected to communicate with their stakeholders in writing. And then there should be good documentation for future references, among others. And then good record keeping of procurement proceedings from, the advertisement to tender evaluation to contract, um, document, among others, must be kept well for the benefit of the organization. And then grounds for rejection of tenders should be specified in the tender document. So once you decide to procure, once you be dealing with tenders, then the grounds for rejection, not only rejection, for acceptance must be specified in the tender document prior to, full participation of tenders. Okay, so this boils down to the principles of fairness, transparency, among others. Not only that, professionalism. So we need to communicate, we need to state all the criteria for rejection as well as acceptance before, the participation of tenders. And then again, entities, procurement entities should publish notice of contract award. So once we go through the process and then successfully select or arrive at a particular tender, once contract is, signed, then we need to, publish the notice of contract award. We need to publish notice of contract award. And it must be done promptly. So all these are some of the, what do you call it? The procurement rules, regardless of the institution or the sector. Okay, whether public procurement or private procurement. And this does not go for, individual procurement. Individual procurement. That's why I said from the beginning of our engagement that we will be focusing on more on organizational procurement or buying. So in organizational procurement, like I've said, procurement goes with rules or guidelines. Procurement goes with rules, guidelines. And then the procurement entity should reject all forms of inducement from service providers, be it suppliers or any other form of service providers. We need to avoid, because there's that tendency of, being influenced by those inducements. So if you accept gifts from service providers, it should be, I don't know, but it has that tendency of influencing you. Not everybody have that control to say that even though you did this, but I'm going to be firm with my decisions. So you don't have to go through that temptation at all. And it is part of the rules. And the description of goods should be accurate and non-restrictive. Non-restrictive in the sense that we want competition to be in the procurement process. But sometimes the way we describe the goods or come out with the specification, it becomes too obvious that we want to deal with a particular supplier and we don't want processes or procurement process unless there's a good reason why maybe specifying in this manner will be of great interest to the organization. But apart from that, it has to be open in order to attract more competition from, tenders. And then language of tender document and offers should be in English. So once you are in Ghana, you need to understand this. Once you're in Ghana, you need to understand that that is our medium of what instruction, English language. It doesn't mean that in your engagement you can't use any other language, but if it has to do with the publication, contract signing, and all official engagement, the language must be in English. Okay, so that is basically with the procurement rules. And then from there, we came to um, procurement methods. Procurement methods. And then we looked at a number of them. And then the conditions suitable for the application of these methods. So the fact is, you can't just decide because you are the procurement officer. Just as I mentioned, procurement comes with rules and regulations. So in most cases, we go by those rules and regulations. So the rules will come with these methods. So basically, the methods can be categorized into two major types: competitive type, and then those methods that are less competitive. So for competitive methods in Ghana, we have two forms. We have what we call especially with the public sector procurement, we have what we call the international competitive tendering method, and then the national competitive tendering method. So these forms are typical examples of what we call competitive tendering methods. And then we have the other forms, but they are less competitive in nature. Examples are single source procurement or sole source procurement, request for quotation, even two-stage tendering, and then we have what we call restricted tendering method. But these methods can only be selected based on the threshold. So ideally, procurement methods are selected based on the threshold. So you look at the threshold and then the corresponding procurement method. Thresholds, then the corresponding method. And I asked that, how would the entity arrive at the threshold? And then the answer was very simple. Every procurement comes with a budget. Okay, so once you budget the procurement, you will know how much it will cost to complete a particular procurement process. So the budget will tell you that this is how much it will cost the organization for the acquisition of A, B, or C. So once you know the estimates or the budget, you do your market survey to actually come out with. It will not be the actual, okay, but because it's a budget, then you know how much it will cost. So based on the budget, you know that, oh, okay, so this is the procurement value. And once the procurement value has been established, then you can easily identify the corresponding threshold. So ideally, all procurement methods must be selected based on the threshold. But just as we saw, certain circumstances will not make it appropriate to select a method based on the threshold. So going back to what happened last week, imagine if NADMO, for instance, wanted to procure some items to help people in, that difficult situation. People were dying, but lives were lost, properties were destroyed, among others. So if NADMO wanted to maybe procure A or B, and it was for a very short time. So under the circumstance, you don't expect NADMO to go competitive with their procurement method. Because by the time the competitive process is done, almost all the affected people and their properties be gone. Okay, so there are certain circumstances. So here the entity does not determine the circumstances. The circumstances are captured in the law. Okay, so specifically, if you go to the Public Procurement um, Act, as amended, that Act now 1.4, these circumstances are captured there. So the entity does not determine or, come out with circumstances. The circumstances are already stated in the law. So once you have your circumstance correspond to what has been established in the law, then it means that you can use any method that will help the entity to achieve the needed supplies. But one thing you need to know is that in as much as the entity has that advantage to even commence the procurement process before approval is given, it should be in line with what has been stated in the law, because sending that request to the regulator does not mean it is 100% automatic that the approval will be given. There are instances where such letters do not receive approval. In some cases, the regulator, in this case, the Public Procurement Authority, will disapprove. So here, the one who superintended over the procurement process will suffer, will need to account for his or her actions or inactions. So that is why we need to be professionals enough to know that this action we are taking is in line with the rules, is in line with the guidelines. So these are some of the circumstances, urgent or emergency requirement. Okay, so NADMO, based on what happened, could procure certain items irrespective of how much it will cost, based on what? This circumstance, urgent or emergency requirement. In actual sense, the cost of acquisition normally would call for a competitive tendering method, but due to the urgent or emergency requirement, NADMO could use the single source procurement or sole source procurement for that process. And then they will still get the approval. Okay, so, and then limited number of supplies. Limited number of supplies, just like availability of goods. So, sometimes the goods are not readily available. Even if they are, from they are available from very limited sources. So in this case, you have that justification for maybe using any of the less competitive. It could be restricted, it could be price quotation because the goods are not readily available or they are available. So you can use an appropriate method. Contract extension, for instance, may be a good justification for using any suitable method outside of the threshold. And then another circumstance, research, experiment, study, or development purposes. And then issues of national security, compatibility, and then standardization are all good circumstances or basis for selecting a method other than, I mean, the threshold. Okay, so basically that is what we did. I don't know if there are some few questions from, what I have done so far. If there are one or two questions, you are free to ask or comment or suggestions.
Hello, sir.
Okay. Yes, Nita, go ahead.
Sir, thank you very much. Sir, please, I just want to find out a company like NADMO or any other entity, for instance, the circumstances aspect.
Mhm.
Why is it that a company like NADMO would not anticipate that a country like Ghana, we normally had flood issues, maybe periodically there's fire and those things, so that they would rather have a warehouse so they can stock some of these emergency equipment so that once they occur, instead of now going for restricted tendering or maybe so because of the circumstances as quickly as possible. Because so my question is that would there even be a room for negotiations of the price or whatever they are going to procure because it's an emergency? Please bring it. We need this number of quantities and the supply to resolve the issue. So I am thinking that is it a good way to have a warehouse and stock some of these things? I know there's also a disadvantage to it, but if we really want to protect the public purse or maybe cut down on cost, then is it a good way to rather anticipate and store some of these goods or equipments? Is it a good way to do that?
Okay. All right. So I think yes, it's a very good question. But you see, I believe I don't work for NADBO, but I believe they have, some of these critical items, some, not all, some, okay, at their warehouses or maybe at their disposal. But you can't, it is just an anticipation forecast that, oh, maybe when we get to the rainy season, we normally experience this. And in most cases, people uh, displace, and such people will be in need of mattresses, they will be in need of maybe um, life, what do you call it, jackets or something. Few other things they will have it, but as to the exact amount, that NADMO will not be in that position to say that, oh, when we experience this quantum of rain, the impact will be this. And for that matter, we need to get this amount of resources, you know, in our warehouse. So, in as much as they will have some items, it will not be at the same, you know, the required number needed when these emergencies do occur. And at the same time, you know that NADMO, just like any other establishment, will not have all the needed resources. Okay, will not have all the needed resources. So they are managing. They are managing. Today, it may not be, when you talk about, um, let's say, disaster, it could be natural, just like we witnessed. They are also artificial, you know, disaster, among others. So they can't actually have the exact um, needs. They can't. If they decide to go or move on that target, then that more warehouse will be bigger than the whole city in Ghana, even if the resources are there. And you know the dangers of stocking to I mean, maximum or to capacity. It is not very good to, unless probably maybe your anticipation is I mean, 100%. But some of these things you can't, give exact figures to it. And then again, you were talking about costs. Yes, we know that reactive procurement or emergency procurement are expensive because once suppliers um, know that you need something urgently, that is when they want to make abnormal profit. So that is why when I started, I said that we need to plan procurement. But sometimes, no matter how the planning goes, there will be some emergency. So in as much as there will be emergency, at least all procurement should be planned. But emergency, you cannot plan with, I mean, natural disasters. It is difficult to, I mean, predict. Okay, so everybody knows that reactive procurement is expensive. That is why we do not want to go there. But when issues like disasters happen, then you have no choice than to go with the situation. So you try as much as possible to, I mean, bring it down, even though at that point you may not have on the negotiation table, you may not have that strong negotiation table because you need those items urgently. And it's normal when the supplier is, um, I mean, when the buyer is needs a particular item urgently, then, on the negotiation table, the supplying organization or supplier controls because of the situation, and there's little you can do about it. Okay, there's little you can do about it. So that is how maybe I will address your answer for now. I think I saw some. I don't know.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Hello,
you.
hello,
Yeah.
sir.
Yes, sir. Emmanuel.
Sir, good morning from my end here.
Good morning.
I I have a question. Even though we are we are learning about procurement, but I think this is also relevant since Ken asked question that has relation. Did what happened last week, is it truly a natural disaster or is a human cause? I really want to understand it because I've been hearing natural disaster, but clearly, if you watch carefully what happened last week, it is
Hmm.
quite, in my view, it is quite different from natural disaster. Because what
Okay.
I am now, when we talk about natural disaster, the definition or the approach at which the emergency team or the energy they put in it to resolve that is quite different. And looking at what is going on in Ghana or what is happening right now in Ghana, we term it as a natural disaster. I'm kind of confused. So I know it is not directly to relate to procurement, but I believe since you are an expert in this field, you can throw light more because I really want to get a clarity on what natural disaster is and what is a human cause.
All right. So, yes, it is. It is because when we talk about rains, we don't create, individuals do not, I mean, create rain. Okay. Um, I know where you are coming from because for some cities they have systems that are able to contain. I think I heard that from the president. The volume of water we experienced in Accra was, I think, 130 is it millimeters or something. That's what I heard. And I know that some cities can contain more than that. But due to, I mean, I know, there are some human activities that contributed to the severe nature of, what happened. But obviously, because it is rain and individuals do not create rain, it could be said that it is a natural disaster. But we could have, you know, as individuals, as a country, maybe we can do more, we can do better than maybe we are doing currently. Because what some of us be doing contributed hugely to the impact we witness. Okay, so that is what I would say for now. I know even there are certain cities. I remember I think 2 years ago, last year, um, Toronto suffered. Toronto is an advanced city. It suffered massive rain, and then almost all major areas in Toronto were submerged. Okay, people will say that if that rain had been in Accra, then almost everybody would be dead and gone. I mean, but as a country, um, we are not there. We are hoping to be there, and I believe um, with the help of God, you get there. But you can't take anything away from what happened. That it is, even though some aspects are related to activities, but it's a natural disaster because it is rain caused by rain. Okay, we didn't anticipate that. Oh, from records, from what the president said, I think we've never experienced that amount of rain in a day. Okay, so in as much as we've been anticipating for rain during this period, but the quantum or the volume of rain was beyond what we could deal with. Okay, so obviously it is. It is.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Any other question? I think I'm seeing few comments. So let me check the chat box. Okay, so somebody, Richard, is asking if a user department can turn down a gift from a service provider due to rules and ethics. A gift. Okay, so let me ask. I will not even answer this the class. Can the user department turn down a gift from a service provider due to rules and ethics? Mr. Danzo, are you responding to this question or you have another one? Go ahead. Mr. Danzo Boate.
Yes, sir. Please, I'm
Mhm.
responding, sir.
Okay, okay.
Yes, they can reject. In fact, I work with UN organizations. At the end of every year, should I call it a gift? Okay, we give them calendars and cookies and stuff. That's what we give to our customers. But anytime we send it, they reject it. The procurement team, because they are the people we deal with. In fact, the whole organization, they don't receive gifts from any vendor or anybody. They always turn
Yeah,
it down. But it's also because they give it to me, I also have to present it first.
yeah, yeah,
They don't collect it. And even our organization, it's hardly that you are expected to take a gift from a customer.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
inappropriate unless it's documented that
Okay,
the customer brought this. But to go and receive it without the managers know-how and all those things. Because even our gifts, I also have a limit. We can't give anybody something that is worth more than $100.
okay, okay, okay. That's fine. Yeah. So the organization or the user department is more or less like the individual. So just as we can reject, the organization can also reject based on some of these things that in our organization, we don't accept any form of gifts. Okay, because of, what that gift can do in subsequent engagement with those service providers or stakeholders. So it is something. In other jurisdictions, they call it um, um, a tip or greasing of palm or something. Even when you go to the Baba after everything, they are requesting for a tip. Even those doing DoorDash or Uber, they are looking at what tips. Oh, this one has, we know that it can influence people's the way they do things and the like. So it is difficult. This issue is difficult, but we need to avoid it. I've mentioned to you that when it comes to business school, my department, I'm the exams officer. So this thing happened. I will not mention the lecturer's name, but student failed the course. And then she came to my office and said, I wrote a research. And I said, oh, I've updated the results. It is still F. The student started complaining that I even gave money to this lecturer. So how come, he failed me again? I said, but did you offer the gift because you wanted the lecturer to pass you, or it was just a normal gift? So you can't even differentiate that this is a normal gift, or what is a normal gift? This gift is a gift. So the student gave that thing to the lecturer because she was, hoping for something good to happen. And then the lecturer didn't see it that way. So you see, it can affect whatever we do. So let us avoid it. It is gifts are good, but not only monetary gifts and all forms of gifts. There's something we call non-monetary gift. And I wouldn't want to mention the forms. There are a lot of them. All right. So let us avoid that. Okay. So that is that for, the, what do you call it? The assets. But let's quickly look at this. Can you discuss the relevance of procurement rules and methods in organization? Can you mention some of them? The relevance of these rules and methods in organizations, procurement organizations. Once we have rules, not just any rules, I'm talking about procurement rules. Once we have methods, what are their relevance to, the organization? Can you think of any why it is important, relevant to have these rules in place? Or these rules are there. Can you see some of the relevance of it? Mr. Akrabo, go ahead.
Okay, good morning, sir.
Good
Sir,
morning.
these rules are there to guide us for transparency and accountability.
Okay. So, yes, Mr. Akrabo is saying it is good that we have the rules because of issues like transparency and then the rest. Okay, Ima.
It also helps to promote fairness and also competition among the suppliers.
Wonderful. All right. So, okay, Michael, me and AJ.
Okay, there is also the minimization of corruption and then its related siblings.
Wonderful. Thank you. Nitan.
So, sir, it also prevents reputational risk.
What do you mean by reputational risk? It prevents.
So, sir,
You said it prevents.
yes.
Okay, okay, all right.
So it prevent, yeah, so that
Yes.
the reputation will be maintained.
Okay, okay, all right. I think I want to mention, okay, Maria, Mrs. Mariam Opare, go ahead.
So good one, please. It's Miriam.
Miriam, oh, okay. Miriam, go ahead.
For cost control and value for money.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. Hey, Juliet Obenewa, go ahead. Mrs. Oh, yes, Mrs. Juliet Obenewa. Okay, Bridget, go ahead.
Yes,
Before
sir.
Mr.
We also have legal compliance.
Come again.
Legal compliance.
Legal compliance. Okay. Okay. All right. Mr. Danso.
Yes, sir. So it helps set standardization and professionalism, and also controls set as the control measures.
Control measure. Wonderful. Internal control measure. Wonderful. So clearly, what you have stated clearly shows that indeed the rules that we have in procurement, the methods that we use are all relevant. In fact, there may be issues with them. But if you weigh the benefits compared to the cost aspect, I think the benefits any day will outweigh the disadvantages of the rule. So it is not by mistake why we have what we call procurement rules. So people know that once we allow people to do whatever they want, the disadvantages are huge, huge, huge. So there are rules, and we need to go by rules. And a friend of mine will say that uh, a society where there are no rules, where there are no guidelines, where there are no laws, there will be what? Anarchy. Okay? There will be anarchy. People will be beating, fighting, doing all sort of things. So it is better that we have rules. Even God, the creator, saw the need to give us some rules. Okay, so Christians will tell you that they are commandments. And God know why he gave us those commandments. So it is relevant to have these rules in place. Thank you very much for your contribution. I think today, like I mentioned, we look at supplier selection and development. Briefly, um, if I don't know if we'll be able to complete everything today, but we are looking at supplier selection and then development. But before that, let me ask these two questions quickly. The first one is, who is a supplier? Because we've been talking about supplier. Who is a supplier? Can somebody explain to us who a supplier is? Supplier. Yes, who is a supplier? Before we continue, who is a supplier? Okay, Mr. Ade, go ahead.
So a supplier is a vendor or a person or a company that provides goods and services in an organization or to an organization.
Okay, wonderful. So that is a very good definition. So a supplier could be an individual, could be an organization that supplies goods or services to another individual or organization in return for monetary or its-related forms. Okay, so we need to understand that suppliers are business people, whether an individual or an organization. They are not just supplying goods and services. They are not, charity organizations. They are doing that in return for something. Okay, so just as you are a consumer or a buyer, you are there, you are procuring or buying the goods with some goals. The same applies to the supplier. They are supplying the goods, but they have their own what? Objective or goal. Okay. So if you look at the procurement cycle carefully, can you tell me which stage of the cycle do we focus on supplier selection? Can you tell me? Okay. Me, Michael AJ, go ahead.
Yeah, that will be at the sourcing stage.
Wonderful. So you guys, you are doing great. So at the sourcing stage. So we say that at the sourcing, when we talk about sourcing, basically it is about the identification, selection, and then development of what suppliers. So we identify where suppliers are, and then we select. But the final part of sourcing is development. But we don't develop all suppliers. So we look at it when we get to the development side. So at the sourcing stage. But you see, if you look at the objectives of whether the specific objectives of procurement or the basic procurement objective, even when we focus on the 5 rights of procurement, rights, quantity, right, price, right, quality. The focus is one of the objectives is what? Right, quality. So the focus will not be on the selection of any supplier, but rather the selection of a good or best supplier. I don't know if you're getting it. So even though we are dealing with suppliers, but the procurement objective is telling us to specifically focus on selecting best or good suppliers, not just any supplier. So it means that in as much as we may have a number of suppliers, some of them may not be as good as we want to deal with. Some may be very good. So as a procurement person, your goal should be on the selection of what? The good ones. So the second question is, who is a good supplier? We have moved from a supplier to a good supplier. So who is a good supplier in this case? Who is a good supplier? And I'm asking the whole class, who is a good supplier? Mrs. Abigail Aqua, I can see you. I hope you are doing well. My good friend, Eunice.
Hello, sir.
Eunice.
I'm here.
Okay. All right. Miriam. Mrs. Miriam Opara. Go ahead.
Say, from my view, I can say a good supplier is someone who possesses the quality of pricing, He has quality, how he render his services are top notch.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mrs. Emmanuel Adai.
So when we talk of a good supplier, we are talking about someone who provides quality product and services and also deliver the product or the service on time.
Wonderful. Okay. So final one, Michael. Yeah,
Okay, to add to what Mr. Ade said earlier on, so it will be a person or an organization that is able to provide these services using the 5 hours in a consistent and a reliable manner.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So that is that. So once we talk about a good supplier, a good vendor, contractor, whatever, there are certain indicators or variables we use. Because you can't call me a good lecturer by just looking at my face. There are certain criteria we use. So we say that supplier or vendor performance is usually evaluated in the areas of what? Pricing, quality, delivery, and service. So we look at all these and how well the supplier is, given these or performing in relation to these criteria. Because like I mentioned, for some goods and services, there may be a couple of potential suppliers. Okay, so how much is this supplier pricing their goods and services compared to other suppliers in terms of the goods they are offering, the quality wise, delivery, and then the kind of service they provide. So you compare supplier A, B, C, up to the last supplier against these variables. Then you can say that supplier A is better than all the other suppliers because supplier A perform well in terms of indicator A, which is pricing, indicator B, which is quality, with C, and then the rest. So we say that care must be taken in selecting sources of supply. And then again, selected suppliers must have the following characteristics. So once we talk about a good supplier, as you mentioned, Miriam, Emmanuel, and Michael. One, a supplier that is consistently meeting delivery requirements. Good supplier, delivery requirements. So this is huge. So if a buyer says that supply quantities, this amount, 20 pieces, on 10th July at 10 a.m. Let's say at the whole campus of the university. So exactly 10 a.m., 9:58, you are there at the Takoradi campus with the exact quantities. The timing was good. The university is correct, but the exact location is wrong. So consistently meeting delivery requirements, all the requirements associated with what? The delivery. And then consistently providing specified quality. So people will ask, so how do we measure the quality? It is difficult sometimes, but once the buyer places the order comes with specification. Okay, so it comes with specification. So sometimes the exact quality is given, but you get to the lowest level, whatever is being supplied must be able to fit the intended purpose. So if I need a laptop for administrative or academic functions, that laptop is supposed to do that. So you don't give me a laptop that is not compatible with any projector. It is a laptop, all right, but it does not fit the purpose. So quality, what the provider requested for. So once it fits the purpose, we say that it is a good product. And then always achieves high service levels. We are talking about customer service. The service we give to customers. High. So as perceived, this one is coming from the buyer. You are not saying that, oh, I'm giving you the service you are giving. How does the ultimate consumer buyer perceives it? Is it a good one or it's a bad one? Always. So right from the selection process to the order to supply, sometimes you can even go beyond after sales, the kind of service. And then you talk about what? The price, competitive. We are not looking at cheaper prices. We say competitive price. So sometimes a supplier is quoting a price and you realize that this price, it sounds too good to be true. This can't be. Core i5 laptop. The guy, brand new laptop with all those advanced spec. And then the supplier is quoting 500 series. So don't be quick to make that decision. Because as a procurement person, you know that under no circumstance should a brand new laptop with this feature or spec cost you 500 cedis. So in as much as we are looking at ways to minimize costs associated with procurement, some prices are just too good to be true. They are just way below the market prices. So going for competitive price does not mean that always you must be looking for cheaper prices. So sometimes the price the supplier is quoting should tell you that there are issues or there may be issues. So competitive, at least it must be in competition with the market prices. And then you're also looking at what? A stable company. Stability is one of the key aspects of what? Like I mentioned, that it is not just an individual. So you want to deal with a stable company, because as consumers, as buyers, we are mostly moved with taste and preferences. So once we fall in love with a particular product or service, we want that provider to be in business. Just like your haircut. How often do you change your barber? How often? It is difficult. So when you visit your barber and then there's this new face, sometimes you are a bit skeptical to even move to that seat, because we are moved with taste and preferences. Even though this barber may not be the best, but at least you know that the outcome will not be completely, different from what you anticipate. Okay, so in terms of their finances, in terms of their capacity, among others, we want a stable company, because we don't want to be changing products or, services every now and then. Like I mentioned, we move with taste and preferences. So once we are in love with this, until something happens, we want to be dealing with a particular product, so stable company. And then provides good backup service. So in terms of the criteria, you are also looking at this. This supplier is available to provide a good backup service. So sometimes the company will supply you the needed items. And then there will be sometimes, we call it after sales service. They will come sometimes to even maintain or repair or service items they have supplied to you. Okay, sometimes they'll be checking up on you. So how is the product going? How are the users using or coping with the product? You get it. If you have any challenge, they are prepared to assist with any challenge or difficulty the product may bring to users. So you see, other suppliers, once they supply, that's it. They don't really care what happens. And then you also think about the supplier that keeps the buyer informed of progress in terms of from the order to delivery. They will be giving you all the needed information. That, due to what is happening here, due to this, the weather condition, due to this, the product, the delivery will delay for maybe 2 hours or 3 weeks or even a month. So as a result, let us look for these alternative until the product finally gets to your site. Okay, so once you have the update, it will help you to prepare. If you're not getting the items at the right time, you may prepare based on the information the provider or supplier is giving you. For some suppliers, they will just keep mute. Last moment, they will tell you that we are not able to supply because there's maybe accident on the Accra Kumasi, highway or on the Temamoto way, so we can't supply the items. Okay, and that is not a sign of a good supplier. You need to update the provider so that even if you are not going to meet the deadline, at least you inform the buyer to make alternative arrangement. So when a supplier possesses these characteristics, then we can confidently say that is a good supplier. That is a good supplier. So the key thing is that we measure the performance. We don't just look at them and say that, oh, this is a good supplier, that is a bad supplier. No, we don't just look at them. We don't just look at the organization. We don't look at how they dress. No, we look at the performance based on the criteria I mentioned in terms of the prices, in terms of service, in terms of quality, and then delivery. So we don't look at, the performance of a supplier for all products. In fact, sometimes the value will inform us to come out with, the kind of appraisal or evaluation we conduct on suppliers. So in the case of low value or non-critical items, it will be sufficient to conduct desk-based research into basic performance of quality and delivery for low value items. Non-critical items, if you want to know that this product is good, sometimes just a desk-based research will be enough for you to conclude that this is a good product, that is a bad product. Okay, so you check, maybe you can go online, check reviews by customers, and then you go through all the reviews. By the time you are done with the comments or reviews, you know that this is a good place, that is a bad thing. So based on the appraisals, the evaluations that we do, sometimes organizations categorize suppliers as either approved or preferred. Approved or preferred. And I know that it's not just, I'm using this engagement. You are meeting a number of lecturers. And in your mind, you know that this lecturer belongs to this category, that category. You have it. Whether it's a fair assessment or not, that is your category. Your appraiser. The same way, lecturers also have their own appraiser for students. So if you ask this lecturer, he or she will tell you that for this class, this is my best student. That is my best student. That is my best student. And it is against certain things, how you contribute, how you ask questions, how you able to even, make suggestions and all that. Okay, so when we come to buyer-supplier engagement, we do that a lot. Sometimes the appraisals we do, suppliers are not even aware that this is what we are doing. They are not even aware that as a buyer, you are doing A, B, and C about them. Sometimes they are aware. But I'm saying that for critical items, you don't need just a desk-based research. If you want to check the performance of a supplier, you need to adopt a more rigorous measurement. A more rigorous measurement before you select a particular supplier. So sometimes this may involve site visits and could also require external accreditation of the supplier for critical high value procurement because of the risk involved. The reason is very simple. For high value critical acquisition, If you mess up with the selection process, because we are looking at getting quality supplies, input or resources or items. So if you select the wrong supplier, obviously you shouldn't expect good supplies. So we need to be careful. We need to be very careful with what? The selection process. Amy, the criteria we use in selecting a supplier must be a rigorous one. Sometimes you don't just depend solely on the information you are receiving, the document they have submitted to you. You need to even go to their premises to see things for yourself. Because we are in this country, and those of you who are very current, I wouldn't say current, but if you remember past events, the former Minister of Education contracted an organization that does not exist to supply certain books. I don't want to mention the minister's name. If you remember, it happened. Government of Ghana against a company that didn't exist. If you look at the cost of the procurement, it was huge, millions of dollars. Meanwhile, the company was non-existent. It didn't exist. Okay, so for such acquisition, don't just sit here. Don't just sit in your offices and say that, oh, we are dealing with them, or we have received this from them. Our company is located at this place. Meanwhile, when you go to that location, there will be no company there. It happens a lot. So in the selection process, we need to be very careful with it. To be a number of strategies or methodologies practitioners use. And today we will focus on just two of them. The first one will be on what we classify as the Cater's 10 C's for supplier selection. So according to Cater, once you focus on selecting a good supplier, there are 10 C's you need to look at for 10 C's, 10 of them. So we have the top 7 C's, and then we have the bottom 3 C's. So the first C is known as what? Competence. So according to Cater, competence of all staff all the time. Competence. So if there is this manufacturing company or supplying organization you want to deal with, the value is huge. The product, nature of the item is critical. So we just want to be sure that we're dealing with the right company. So according to Cater, look at the competence. Don't just decide on the information they are giving you. So you require evidence. So when they tell you that, oh, we have this, we have that, you want to go beyond what they are telling you, what they have provided. You need to get evidence that, oh, okay, if it is about competence, you are not just looking at certificates of, the employees. You are looking at their past records, things they have done. Things they have done. So you can even talk to institutions they have worked with in the past. Okay, so the first thing is that look at the competence, not just some of the stuff, all the stuff that matter to your business engagement according to 10 catered 10 Cs. And then capacity. Do they have, because when we're looking at the criteria, you mentioned stable company. So you want to know the capacity of the company. That should tell you whether the company is a stable one or not. We know that sometimes, yes, today a solid company will be in operations. The next moment they are no more. It happens, but rarely do these things happen. Even though there are certain instances where companies like that, you know, we used to have, I don't know how many of you remember, there was a bank called is it Capital Bank? Capital Bank was yes, Capital Bank. But now if you look at the banking sector in Ghana, you don't see any Capital Bank. So yeah, it happens. But it doesn't, the occurrences are not many. Okay, so look at the capacity. And sometimes, do they have a flexible capacity? You look at the company, you look at the company's site, you look at the plant, you look at whatever they are doing, you realize that the company is in for business for a very long time. They also have flexible capacity, meaning they can move with tastes and preferences of the buying organization. Because I said, as consumers, we move with tastes and preferences. So today we are in love with product A. We want it to be in this form. The next moment, we want it in a different form. So assuming our taste and preference changes, should that supplier be in that position to, provide our needs? So you are looking at that. So not long ago, the moment you mentioned Guinness Ghana, you know that Guinness Ghana was basically into alcoholic drinks, the Guinness, the rare Guinness. And then over time, you realize that, and it's funny, because when you come to Ghana, we say that about 70% of the population is what Christians. We have about, is it 15 or 20%, less than that, Muslims. The rest belong to the other religion. But if you look at the top two religions in Ghana, Christians and Muslims, they don't take alcohol according to their doctrines. But you ask yourself, these alcohol companies, who are they selling their products to? Is it to the traditional religious people? How many are they? But when you go to these pubs, sold out, sold out, sold out. So it's funny sometimes. So they realize that if about 70% are religious, let us have, the non-alcoholic aspect. So they introduce Malta Guinness. You get it. So there has to be that flexibility in terms of the company, because they are not just producing the items or supplying the items. They want, I've mentioned that these are business people. They want people to buy and consume. So if consumers say we want A rather than B, you need to produce B for them. But do you have that flexible capacity? You need to look at it. Commitment to quality. So we are talking about quality products and services. And quality must not start from just the supply. It must start from the base, the manufacturing. So you go to this company and then you realize that from top to bottom, they have instituted quality management systems from the beginning to the end. Quality. So once they have quality systems in place, it will automatically affect the outcome. Meaning you get quality supplies from such suppliers or producers. And that will affect your operations as well. So don't just, because you are looking at quality products, quality services, and you can only get it from that supplier or vendor with quality systems in place. And then the fourth C, according to Kita, is control of processes. Some companies are in operations, suppliers are in operations, but they are not in control. How do I mean? Some, they are there, but they have maybe outsourced a chunk of their operations. They are subcontractors or sub-vendors. Okay, so the company is actually existing. The contracting company is there. That is them. But almost everything that has to do with their core mandate is in the hands of an external organization. So meaning, even if you are in good terms with this company, any failure from their external organization will affect you. So you don't want that to happen because you are dealing with company A. Company is your company against company A, and you will just want to manage that relationship. You don't want to have a third party involved. Even if there is a third party, their impact is minimal. But when you realize that the company is only existing in name or paper, then you should be very careful with that. Okay, so you want the company that is in full control of their processes. Full control. So if you need A, B, and C, they don't depend on any other external organization before they can act on it. But if about 60, 70% of the company's operations are in the hands of an external organization, it means that the company is not in full control. Meaning, once the third party decides to do certain things, it can affect you. So you need to be very careful about control too. So you need to go further to know sometimes by conducting what we call site visit to see if the company is doing what they claim to be doing. And then you look at cost, no cash, sufficient funds for the business. Stability. Funds for their employees to pay their salaries and wages, among others. Funds for their operations. And I said that sometimes if you allow these companies to give you information, most of the things they provide are not accurate. So you need to find better ways to validate the kind of information they provide. So when a company is in bankruptcy or in serious debt, you can't sign huge contracts with such companies. Maybe they need your money to do something, and then they will just vanish. So you need to be very careful. And then cost. And it has to be with the price. of the items. Are they competitive or they are not? So you compare with other suppliers. And I'm saying that we shouldn't be looking at just cheaper prices. It is good because as normal consumers or buyers, we are interested in cheaper prices. But sometimes once you see the price, it should tell you something. Buying iPhone 17 Pro Max for 1,000 Ghana, you think you are the best procurement person in the world. Buy it and see what will happen. So we need to be careful. And then we talk about what? Consistency. That is the seventh C. Consistency. Consistent production of goods and services. Okay, so in terms of, the content of their product, in terms of the services they are providing, you must be consistent. So if you remember the specific objectives, procurement must ensure what? Best value balance throughout. Value balance. So once we are getting product, we know that it is the same. The ones our users said were okay. It is the same product we are getting today. So we don't want something else. We don't want a situation where today you are giving us quality products or services, the next moment it is something else. People are saying, but is it the same product from the same supplier? Sometimes people ask, did you buy it from the same supplier? Hey, it is the same product. The name, everything is the same. Just that the content or the item is something else. So we don't want that. We want consistency. And sometimes we use international standard organizations, standards. So let's say if it meets certain standard, then we say it's okay. Once it meets this standard. And people don't even care about this ISO figures. All we care is that the product is what we need. And then we move to the additional 3. So the 8th one is culture, compatible with similar values. So as a buyer, once you are about to select a supplier, don't just select any supplier. Maybe the supplier may be okay with the first 7 C's, according to Keita. What about the 8th C, culture? Every supplier, be it an individual or organization, has its culture. Okay, so you want to find out, is your culture compatible with them? If the answer is no, then you need to advise yourself. Typical example, maybe you are a religious-based organization, a Christian, a faith-based organization. You don't subscribe to anything that has to do with LGBT. This is just an example. Okay, so you are dealing with a supplying organization. That supplying organization is giving you quality products. Everything about them, their competencies, capacity, commitment to control, to quality control of processes are unquestionable. The prices they offer, competitive. Consistent products and services. The only difference is that this company is a major sponsor to LGBT activities. So you realize that 2 different organizations with 2 different cultures. Your continuous engagement with this supplier means you are indirectly supporting that activity. activity. So ask yourself, are you interested in that? Do you want to do that? If the answer is no, it means that even though the top 7 C's are okay, but in terms of culture, it is a no-go area because we don't want to support this. We are a faith-based organization. Even though we are a business entity, we are interested in profit, but we want to get profit using or complying or adhering to a company's culture. So you look at that. And this will not be the only aspect of culture. You also look at child labor. You don't support or subscribe to that. But the organization, the supply organization is using that. They are also exploiting employees. They are doing a whole sort of things that are not in line with your culture. So you may avoid that. And then you also talk about what we call the 9th C, which is clean sustainability. Environmentally sound, conforming with legislative requirements. Okay, so not just environment, you are looking at the economy, you're also looking at what society. So is the supplier paying taxes? So the items are good, competitive, all that, but the supplier is not conforming to the legislative requirements. They are not paying taxes. They are not doing this. They are not paying attention to the environment. That's why I tell students other classes that we can easily use the gold board to manage illegal mining in Ghana. Simple as that. So if I am in support, I am conscious of the environment, and then my suppliers are not, I can just tell them that if you don't move away from this, you will not buy your products. You can easily do that. And Go Board can easily use the mandate it has to easily control illegal mining. Because now, I think for all small-scale miners in Ghana, they can only sell their product, their gold, to Gold Board. And now they are even pushing for a percentage of those large-scale miners to sell their gold to Gold Board. So Gold Board, before they will say we are buying your gold, maybe they will visit your operation site. And once they realize that you are doing something against the environment outside what has been given you, they will not purchase your gold. And then, based on the law, individuals cannot move gold outside without the approval of maybe Gold Board. So you are mining gold, but there will be no value for it. So clean environment. You think about what sustainability. And then communication. The supplier is fully integrated with information and communication technology. So probably you, the buying organization, you have fully implemented e-procurement system. Okay. Everything procurement now is done electronically. But if a supplier does not have that system, it means that you can't there's nothing you can do with the supplier. So the supplier may be giving you better deals. All the 9 previous C's are intact. The only exception here is communication. Communication. We are no more using manual procurement processes. Everything is done electronically. So if you do not have that system, it means we can't select you or do business with you. So according to CATA, these are the 10 C's. If you focus on selecting the best supplier, then you need to focus on these 10 C's to make judgment. So you may have a number of the suppliers. Subject each supplier to the 10 C's. And then at the end of the day, you give marks. So in terms of competence, you rate out of 10, maybe this supplier will get 9, this supplier will get 8, the other supplier will get 10. In terms of capacity, you rate. So you add or you sum these ratings, and then you can say that supplier A is better than supplier B, C, D, E, F. And I also mentioned what we call a SWOT matrix. So if we are not using the catered tendency, there's another technique or method we use in selecting a supplier. So we can use what we call the SWOT matrix, which is known as the supplier SWOT analysis. So you look at the strengths of each supplier. You also look at the weaknesses of each supplier, and then the opportunities that are or may be available to each supplier, and then the threats. So when it comes to strength, for instance, you may be asking questions like, what advantages does the supplier have as compared with their competitors? So assuming they are in competition with 3 other suppliers. So you ask this supplier A, what advantages does supplier A have over supplier B, C, D? You do the same for all the supplier. Supplier B over C, B, A. Supplier C over D, A, B. You do the same for all the suppliers. What unique resources does the supplier have access to? You need to be asking this question. And then you must do the same for all the participating suppliers. All the participating suppliers. So you do the same thing for supplier A, supplier B, and then you continue. Then you come to the weaknesses. What aspect of the supplier's performance could be improved? Okay, so supplier may have maybe financial issues. Okay, so the issue weakness here has to do with their financial position. It is not that strong. What about supplier B? Oh, it has to do with maybe their production capacity. What about supplier C? Okay, so you look at the weaknesses of all those participating or those potential suppliers. You are not just looking at them, because once you identify the weaknesses, sometimes you ask yourself, so if I really want to develop, because I mentioned that sourcing also considers the development part. So even if you decide on that supplier, can you add something to that supplier's performance, improve their performance? And realize that their issues, some of the issues or weaknesses are something that it is beyond imagination. It's that something you cannot help with it. So you look at those things. Okay, so this one, yeah, this is their issue, but once we maybe offer this assistance, it can help them. Once we do this, it can actually position them well for better opportunities in the future and all that. If that is a good supply, once you, after everything, you realize that that is a good supplier. It is a good supplier because once you add, maybe you work on those weaknesses, yes, the supplier can become a complete supplier, and then they'll be doing things to your benefit. Okay, but sometimes there's nothing you can do. It is just beyond your control. There's nothing you can do. Then you look at opportunities. Is the potential for doing business with our organization a significant opportunity for this supplier? So you look at those opportunities, and then you look at threats. How well placed is the supplier to respond to competitive pressures from other suppliers? How well placed is the supplier to cope with technological advances? Okay, so once we upgrade to maybe a new system, a new software, how prepared, how are they prepared to actually cope with it? It will take them, sometimes you realize that it will take them 10 years to be there. It will take them few months because their financial position is good. So if it has to do with the software, they can easily get it and then be here. If it has to do with their manufacturing equipment, they can easily get this and then be here. But if maybe our demand increases and then we want the production capacity to be increased by, let's say, 100%, 200%, does the company have the capacity? The answer is no, because if it has to do with equipment expansion, it will take them like 20 years or 15 years. So once you realize all this, then you say that dealing with supplier A will be a major problem for us. So maybe after everything, supplier B is better or supplier C is better in terms of these aspects. So we can use the catered tendencies or the supplier SWOT analysis when we want to select a good supplier. And because these methodologies are somewhat rigorous, sometimes we need people with that expertise to be able to evaluate suppliers based on these metrics, not just this, even with the catered tendencies. So that's why I said that once you want to use rigorous methods like this, the procurement in question must be a high value procurement or critical procurement. If it is a normal, non-critical item, don't go through this process. I don't know if you are following. Are you with me, class?
Yes, Doc.
Yeah. So if it is normal, non-critical items, I'm not telling you to use this. But why is this high value? Why the company is investing maybe 2 million, 10 million Ghana cedis, 20 million Ghana cedis, or $2 million, $30 million, and the rest? Then we need to be very careful with the suppliers or the contractors we select. We need to use a more rigorous method. A more rigorous method. Other than that, the company will suffer. But if it's a normal, non-critical items, 500 Ghana cedis, 1,000, 5,000 Ghana cedis. Sometimes when you need people to come, sit down, evaluate suppliers, maybe using SWOT analysis, you may think that, oh, look at the strength is it's not that simple. You need to be very careful with it. You need to sit down, analyze the situation, and then, evaluate the suppliers using their strength and other things. So you can't just look at them and say that, oh, their strength is good, the opportunities are great, the weaknesses are, minimal, and the rest. No, it is a serious work here. So sometimes you need people with that expertise to do that. And then the cost, even the amount you need to pay them to do this evaluation or appraisal for you. So you only focus on what we call, high value. So we move to the development. So once you have gone through all these processes, you realize that there are one or two suppliers. They look promising because the weaknesses are not that huge. With little support from your organization, you'll be able to position that company well. And once that company is positioned well, in the long run, it will be your interest, you the buying organization, because it's like, sometimes people will just sponsor, it happens to another. I met one guy, a plumber, and then he sponsored us, somebody to nursing school. It's called development. But before you develop somebody, make sure you yourself you have developed. Don't just develop people. So the guy could eventually suffer. So you don't do that. I'm telling the guys here, be careful with the kind of investments you do. You get it. So before you develop supply, make sure you yourself you are well developed. You are moving, you're doing things right. And sometimes due to the kind of institutions we work for, we may not be able to develop as we want. But the little that we can do, especially in public procurement, you may not have that luxury to develop suppliers, private organizations, apart from certain things. So you move to the development side. So you select, you identify, you select, and then you develop. So the development is not for all suppliers or contractors. Don't forget, the development part of the source is not for all suppliers because it is cost intensive, it is time consuming, it's a serious investment. So you cannot invest in all suppliers. But once you are convinced that supplier A or B have what it takes to stay in business and to provide the needed goods and services for your organization, you may decide to look at the development side. So maybe in your appraisal, you identify some weaknesses. So you want to help with those weaknesses. So sometimes it is just about how they even fill out the tender document. You realize that they have issues with the filling of a tender document. So you can just offer assistance. Whatever they are giving you is good. Just that they have issues with how to go about the submission of tender documents. So you can just provide them, maybe organize a workshop for suppliers, those key suppliers, on how to maybe go about the standard tender documents. And it's a form of what? Development. You are developing suppliers. You are developing contractors. And we use a number of strategies to go about the development. So there's something we call supplier certification. It is a form or a strategy for supplier development. So we can have categories like gold, silver, and bronze. So in this case, suppliers that attain gold certification, levels will be developed, will be considered for maybe high value procurement processes. Or once it has to do with restricted tendering, we will only focus on gold categorized suppliers or contractors. So that is maybe in your organization, that is the policy. So once it has to do with restricted tendering, we will not consider all suppliers. We only deal with gold categorized suppliers. Okay, so that is, you do that and then you categorize. You satisfy, your suppliers. And then there's what we call supplier assessment and appraisal. And the essence is that once you go through the appraisal, you rate or rank the suppliers. So you can have category A, B, or C, or approved or not approved. And then there's another way, we call it, buyer site visits to suppliers' sites or premises, just to know things. And then once you see that things are not as you want, you can just provide, guidelines. Okay, so this thing you're doing, maybe you can have this thing here. You can move the warehouse to this section you can have this thing here. Okay, so once you go there, you can see things for yourself and then provide relevant feedback to, the suppliers. Okay. So in terms of the development, you can also offer what you call training, education and training. So you can do that through workshop, site discussions, among others. And then there's something called training through process-oriented strategy through continuous improvement, best practice method. Okay, example, maximizing productivity in spite of capacity constraint or meeting delivery schedules. Okay, and then the other form is that extension of financial support to suppliers operation. And this one, there are some limitations. You can't do this in public sector, but for other, what do you call it, private sector procurement, you can also give this financial support. And so that's why I said that you don't just develop every supplier. You only focus on the key ones. Okay, those ones with, um, uh, great, um, future and the rest. You want to look at them and then provide the needed, what do you call it? Support. It could be financial, maybe through grants or through loans, among others, just to make them do well in their operation. So this is the end for today. If there are one or two questions you can ask. I think there's a. Okay, Mr. Akrabo, what will take a new supplier?
Okay, so thank you so much for the opportunity. So please, my question has to do with the best supplier concept. And I believe you've already taken us through all the characteristics that the company or the supplier, they have to meet. So the question I'm trying to put across is that, assuming the company have gone through all these characteristics or they meet all these requirements, and then the other side, where you are working also, maybe your position as a procurement officer or a logistics officer, and you have this company who is able to provide this quality service and they will meet the delivery requirement and all that, they qualify. But you realize at the end of it that their terms and condition will not favor the company. Maybe their service sometimes is highly, it will cost a lot. And then also their payment terms and all that is not as compared to maybe the other competitive who might not meet this requirement. So on this note, do you still have to go in for this, or you look for the one that is a bit cheaper compared to their services? Thank you, sir.
Okay, so I think it's a good question. So sometimes even after the evaluation, even after maybe going through, tender evaluation or supply evaluation and all that, you realize that maybe supplier A's marks are very good, just that their quotation is a bit expensive, or maybe how they want payment to be done is a bit strict and all that. So there's a window we call negotiation. So you need to maybe talk to the suppliers again, that after going through this, you realize that you are maybe the top or the preferred supplier. The only challenge here has to do with maybe your prices. We want to find out if you are willing to avail yourself for negotiation, probably reduce your price to this level. Okay, so you ask. And once the supplier says, I am ready, I want to do this, then maybe you want to reconsider. But once it is outside your budget as an organization, going for those things, may be difficult for the organization. You need to look for, the next one. That's why we rate, suppliers after the evaluation. So we have first rank, second, up to the last one. So if the first one is not willing to negotiate to probably come to the level, or if you are also not willing to maybe meet the supplier halfway, then you need to move to the second, what do you call it, a rank supplier. Because I said that in procurement, because we are dealing with laws, because we are keeping, records, what will be the basis for selecting a particular supplier if the price is higher than what you plan for? So you need to look at that. So if that supplier with all those good accolades is not willing to come to maybe the minimum budget, then you need to maybe move outside that supplier and deal with another supplier, because you are thinking about the organization and not just the quality, but also price is one of the things you need to consider. Is that okay? Hey, are you safe, Mr. Akrabo? Are you online? Okay, so there's a question from Moses. Moses says, what will take a new supplier who has never supplied before to win a contract over suppliers who are already in the field and supplies? Okay, so every procurement comes with 8 criteria of acceptance or rejection. Okay, so if a new supplier is able to, provide or meet the requirement of the buying organization, nothing stops the new supplier from winning, unless based on the standard, tender document, the buyer indicated that once you have not, engaged or done any business with them, you do not qualify. That is fine. But once it is not a major, reason, if it has not been stated anywhere in the procurement document, then nothing stops. Once the new supplier is able to, emerge as the top ranked supplier, nothing stops the supplier from being selected. Okay, but sometimes we use years of experience, and then there is a huge, huge mass assigned to years of experience. But if that is not the major concern, the new supplier also has the possibility of being selected. Because in procurement, we are not just focusing on all suppliers. We are looking for best suppliers, and best suppliers may only be selected according to the criteria of evaluation. Is that okay, Mr. Zoe? Is it Zoe cool? Yes. Moses, is that okay?
Yes,
All
please.
right, thank you. Do we have, I think our time is up, Mr. Somwa Ando, and then we go to Michael.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Go ahead, please. Your time is up.
Yes. Yes. So, sir, in your current explanation relating to the answer you just gave, to it that a buyer can indicate in the contract document that they need they don't need a new supplier also. Is it relating to both public procurement and private procurement? That in public procurement,
I didn't say they will say we don't need supplier. No, I said I didn't say, what I said was that, in the procurement document, they will indicate that as part of the evaluation, this percentage, they will use, let's say, experience in the evaluation process. As part of the criteria will include years of what experience. Okay, so if you are actually into that business, you need to provide evidence that you've been doing that business for a number of years. So if you don't have it, it will go against that new supplier. It doesn't mean they will state that they don't want to deal with new suppliers at all. No, but they will because they want to deal with an experience. They will say that maybe as part of the evaluation, they will consider years of experience. Even in normal employment, sometimes employers indicate that their potential employee must have this minimum years of experience. Sometimes you don't even pay attention to the years of experience. Once you have the academic qualification, you qualify. But the years of experience will be an added advantage. All right. Okay. Yeah, Nee, I think your hand was up.
Because of the time, I would like to do that next week rather.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
Straightforward.
Diana. Okay, so
Hello,
I
sir.
am taking. Yes,
Sir,
hey.
but sir, finally, this is important.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to postpone it, but sir, please, you see, suppliers that they supply and they are paid, and then the tax element on the payment, they have to go and pay to GRE. So, sir, if you find a supplier who consistently doesn't pay this, but is a good supplier, do you always have to follow up for him to go and pay, or you leave it in the hands of the GRA to do that, and then you just go ahead and give them the contract?
Okay, so ideally, since you want the best, you can just advise, especially if that supplier is meeting all the other criteria, with the exception of just the payment. You can just advise that until you do this, we can't do business with you because you are doing very well in terms of evaluation. So to be able to go through this successfully, we will advise that you do this. By failure to do that means we can't actually go ahead. You know, in the procurement process, I mentioned something we call debriefing. Okay, so sometimes why companies, when the unsuccessful tenders, you need to tell them why they were not successful. So sometimes if this supplier um, is not selected, you need to inform the supplier why he or she was not selected, because maybe they failed to submit this document or they failed to pay this. So that in subsequent procurement, they will be careful or conscious of that. You get it? So if it has not gotten to that level, maybe through the selection process, and then some documents are not part. If it is not part, you cannot tell the supplier to bring it because you indicated in the process before in the advert before the process started. So you going behind telling the supplier that you didn't submit this. So now submit means you are not going to the rules of the game. Okay. But if it was, the document is not a major part of the evaluation, just that you need it as, in order to complete the process, then, sometimes you can just do it. But once it is a major document, you need it. And failure on the part of any supplier means disqualification. And then you just go behind it and tell the supplier that you didn't submit this now, go and pay this and bring it. It's not part of the process, So if you do this, it goes against, the principle of what? Professionalism. It also goes against fairness and transparency. All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I have taken attendance. I am done. See you next weekend. No, next weekend is self-study, right? So all the best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, sir. Thank you.
Hello.